My name is Eloise Van. I am 66 years old. For most of my life, I believed that the biggest surprises were already behind me, children grown and gone. Husband passed many years ago. Health slowly but steadily reminding me of the passing time. I thought old age would bring quiet days, predictable routines, perhaps a little loneliness, but nothing that could truly shake the ground under my feet. I was wrong. It all began on a crisp October morning when my son Marcus and his wife, Vanessa, prepared to leave for a 7-day cruise. They had been planning the trip for months, a chance to reconnect. As Vanessa put it with that practiced brightness, she always wore like expensive perfume. I was to stay behind and look after their 8-year-old son, my grandson Jordan. Jordan had been labeled nonverbal since infancy. Doctors came and went with thick folders, long Latin names, and sympathetic nods. Autism spectrum disorder, severe language impairment, global developmental delay, different. Specialists used different combinations of words, but the conclusion was always the same. He did not speak, probably never would. Communication happened through gestures, picture cards, the occasional intense look from those dark, watchful eyes. I loved him with a fierce, almost painful tenderness. Every visit I searched his face for signs of understanding, for any crack in the silence that surrounded him like a second skin. That morning the house buzzed with pre-departure energy. Suitcases lined the hallway. Marcus kept checking his phone, making sure boarding passes were downloaded, passports in the carry-on. Vanessa moved between rooms, like someone performing for an invisible audience. Perfect posture, flawless makeup, platinum blonde weave, not allowing a single strand to fall out of place even in the damp autumn air. "Mom, are you absolutely sure you can handle him for a whole week?" Marcus asked for the third time while wrestling the last. Suitcase into the trunk of their sleek black SUV. I pulled my cardigan tighter against the chill. "I raised babies long before you were born, Marcus. Jordan and I will be just fine." He gave me that half smile, part affection, part guilt, part relief that someone else was taking responsibility for a while. I understood the look. Caring for an aging parent and a special needs child at the same time had never been part of the life plan he and Vanessa had carefully constructed. Vanessa appeared on the porch, holding a small canvas tote. She walked down the steps with deliberate grace. "Eloise, I prepared something special for you," she said in that honey-smooth voice I had long ago. "Learn to read between the lines of chamomile, your favorite calming blend. I made enough for the entire week. The bags are already on the kitchen counter. Just add hot water." I nodded. "That's very thoughtful." "Thank you." She placed a manicured hand lightly on my shoulder, the gesture warm on the surface, cool underneath. "And remember Jordan's schedule, bedtime strictly at 8. If the routine breaks, he becomes very anxious. The pediatrician always stresses how important consistency is with his condition." Jordan stood a few steps behind her, small hand already finding mine. He wore his favorite dinosaur t-shirt, slightly faded now, and clutched the worn gray elephant he had carried since he was 2. From the outside, he looked exactly like the child everyone expected. Quiet, withdrawn, dependent. "We'll stick to the schedule," I promised. Privately, I had always wondered how many of those rigid rules were truly for Jordan's benefit and how many were simply Vanessa's way of keeping the world neatly boxed and labeled, even when she wasn't present. After the 10th reminder, another quick hug from Marcus, and one last wave from the driveway, the black SUV disappeared around the corner. I stood on the porch until the engine sound faded completely. Jordan's small palm stayed pressed into mine the entire time. "Well, little man," I said softly as we turned back toward the house. "Now it's just you and me for 7 whole days." He looked up. For the briefest second, something alive, something far too aware, flashed behind those dark eyes. Then he tugged my hand gently and pulled me inside toward his box of action figures. I told myself it was my imagination. The morning passed in gentle domestic rhythm. I sat with a crossword puzzle in the living room. Jordan arranged his plastic superheroes and dinosaurs across the coffee table in elaborate patterns only he understood. The house felt different without Marcus and Vanessa. A lighter, the usual invisible tension, the one that always seemed to arrive with them and settle over every room, had lifted. For the first time in a long while, the space felt like mine again. Around 11, I decided to make the tea Vanessa had so carefully prepared. The bags sat in a perfect row on the kitchen counter. Each one bore a small white label in her neat handwriting. For Eloise, chamomile calming blend. The attention to detail was almost touching. Almost. I filled the kettle, set it on the stove, opened one bag. The dry herbs carried the familiar sweet floral scent of chamomile. And something else. Faint. Metallic. Like the lingering smell inside. An old hospital corridor. I frowned but continued. While the water heated, I heard Jordan moving in the living room. Not his usual quiet play, but restless pacing. Floorboards creaked, paused, creaked again. He was never restless like this. The kettle whistled. I poured the boiling water. The liquid darkened quickly, much darker than any chamomile I had ever brewed. Thick amber, almost orange-brown. I reached for the honey jar, and then it happened. A small, clear voice from the doorway. "Grandma, don't drink the tea." I spun around so fast the spoon clattered against the counter. Jordan stood there, small, barefoot, dinosaur shirt slightly askew, looking directly at me. The voice was quiet, childlike, perfect in its clarity. My heart slammed against my ribs. For 8 years I had imagined what his voice might sound like if he ever spoke. Dreamed of it, prayed for it in silent moments. And now it was here, real, unmistakable. "Jordan?" My own voice cracked. "Was that you?" He took one careful step forward. His small fists were clenched so tightly the knuckles showed white. "Grandma, please don't drink that tea," he repeated. Louder this time, more certain. "Mama put something in it, something bad." The mug slipped from my fingers. It hit the tile floor and exploded into sharp white pieces. Hot liquid splashed outward in a dark, spreading stain. I barely registered the crash. My legs gave way. I sank onto the nearest kitchen chair, staring at the child who had just shattered 8 years of silence. "You speak?" The words came out hoarse. He nodded once, serious, almost solemn, and came closer until he stood right in front of me. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he whispered. "I wanted to tell you for a long time, but I was scared. Mama said, if I ever spoke to anyone when I wasn't supposed to, something very bad would happen to you." The room tilted. I reached out blindly. My trembling hands found his shoulders, warm, solid, real. All this time, all these years of guessing, of aching, of watching doctors and therapists prod and test and conclude that he was locked away inside himself. And he had been right here, listening, understanding, waiting. "What do you mean? Something bad?" I forced the question out, even though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. His lips trembled, but his gaze never wavered. "She makes me pretend," he said quietly. "When people are around, doctors, teachers, even Daddy sometimes, I have to act like I don't understand anything. But I hear everything, Grandma. I see everything." I pulled him into my arms. He came willingly, small body fitting against mine, the way it always had during hugs and bedtime stories. Only now I felt the frantic beating of his heart matching my own. For 8 long years I had believed my grandson lived behind an invisible wall. For 8 years I had watched Vanessa play the perfect, patient mother of a special child, scheduling appointments, speaking in soft, concerned tones at family gatherings, accepting sympathy from neighbors and friends. And all of it had been theater. "What did she put in my tea?" I asked, although dread already sat heavy in my stomach. Jordan eased back just enough to meet my eyes. His expression was far too old for 8 years. "Medicine," he answered simply. "The kind that makes grown-ups very sleepy all the time, and makes their thinking slow and foggy." He swallowed hard. "She's been doing it for a long time, Grandma. That's why lately you're always so tired. Why you forget things. Why you fall asleep in the chair in the middle of the day." The kitchen swam. I gripped the table edge to keep from falling off the chair completely. 2 years, maybe longer. The tiredness I blamed on age. The little memory slips I laughed off with getting old jokes. The afternoons when I woke up in my armchair with no memory of closing my eyes. Drop by drop, day by day, carefully measured. And all this time she had used my own grandson, forced him to play his part in the lie. "How long have you known?" My voice sounded distant, as though it belonged to someone else. "A long time," he answered. "I learned to read when I was 4. But I pretended I couldn't. I listen when Mama and Daddy talk at night. They think I'm asleep. I'm not." I stared at him, really looked. What kind of strength does it take for an 8-year-old child to remain silent for his entire conscious life? To watch adults discuss him as broken? To endure endless tests and therapies? To hear his own capabilities dismissed again and again? And say nothing? "Why now?" I managed. "Why tell me today?" "Because they're gone," he said simply. "And because yesterday I heard Mama on the phone. She said it was time to speed everything up. While they're away. She said she made the tea bags much stronger this time." I looked down at the dark puddle still spreading across the white tiles. If he had not spoken, if that small, Perfect voice had not cut through the morning. I would have finished the cup, thanked Vanessa for her kindness, laid down for my usual rest, and perhaps never woken up properly again. "We need to be very careful," I said, forcing the words past the tightness in my throat. He nodded. "If Mama finds out I told you," he began. "She won't find out," he finished with sudden firmness. "I know how to pretend. I've done it my whole life. But now we can do it together, Grandma. We can stop her." Determination shone in his eyes, small, fierce, unbreakable. A child who had lived in fear and silence for 8 years was standing in my kitchen, ready to defend us both. I slid off the chair onto my knees, began gathering the broken pieces of porcelain, wiped the cooling tea with a rag. My hands shook badly. And while I cleaned, one clear, hard thought cut through the chaos in my mind. Everything I thought I knew about my family had just shattered. Exactly like this mug. These 7 days would not be quiet babysitting. This was going to be a fight. For my life, for his future. And for the first time in years, despite the terror clawing at my chest, I felt wide awake. After Jordan spoke those first terrifying words in the kitchen, time seemed to slow. The broken mug, the dark tea stain on the floor, the small boy standing in front of me. With eyes far too wise for his age, everything felt suspended. Like a photograph I would never be able to forget. I stayed on my knees for what felt like minutes, rag in hand, wiping the same spot over and over while my mind tried to catch up. Jordan didn't move. He just watched me, patient, waiting for me to finish processing what he had already lived with for years. Finally, I sat back on my heels. "Jordan," I said, voice still unsteady, "come here." He stepped forward without hesitation. I wrapped my arms around him again, this time not out of shock, but out of something deeper, gratitude, grief, fury all at once. He let me hold him tightly, his small cheek pressed against my shoulder. I could feel his heartbeat, fast but steady. When I finally let go, I looked at him properly. "How long?" I asked again, even though he had already answered. I needed to hear it once more, to make it real. "Since I was little," he said quietly. "I remember the first time Mama told me I had to be quiet. I was maybe 4. I said something in front of the doctor. Only one word. Mama, and she smiled for everyone else. But later, when we were alone, she told me if I ever did it again, she would make sure. I never saw you or Daddy anymore." My stomach twisted. She said there are places for children like me. Places where they give medicine that makes you sleep forever. And no one would come looking. I closed my eyes for a second, fighting the wave of nausea. "And you believed her?" He nodded. "I was 5. I didn't know better. After that, I just stopped. I learned how to look like I wasn't listening, how to keep my face blank, how to move slow when people were watching. I thought of all the times I had sat with him on the living room floor, talking to him softly, telling stories, asking questions I never expected answered. I thought of the way he would sometimes tilt his head, eyes following every word, and I had told myself it was wishful thinking. It hadn't been. "You've been protecting us both," I whispered. "I tried," he said simply, "but I couldn't stop the tea. I could only watch." I stood up slowly, legs shaky. "Let's clean this up properly. Then we're going to sit down and talk. Really talk." We worked in silence for a few minutes, me sweeping up the porcelain shards, him wiping the floor with careful strokes. When the kitchen looked normal again, I made fresh tea from a new box. I kept in the cupboard, one Vanessa had never touched. I poured hot chocolate for Jordan from the packet he loved. We sat at the small round table in the sunlight. He wrapped both hands around his mug like an adult would. The gesture was so ordinary, yet so startling. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning. Don't leave anything out." He took a small sip, then began. "It started with the pills. He first noticed them when he was 6. Mama kept a little jar in the bathroom cabinet, white powder inside. She would take it out late at night when she thought everyone was asleep. He would watch through the crack in the door, while she used a tiny spoon to sprinkle the powder over the tea bags. Then she would seal them again with clear tape so no one could tell they had been opened. She said it was special medicine for old people, he told me. She told Daddy it would make you calmer, easier, so you wouldn't argue so much. I remembered those arguments, small ones, nothing dramatic. I had questioned some of Vanessa's decisions about Jordan's therapies, about the endless tests. I had once suggested a different specialist, who specialized in minimally verbal children, who later developed speech. Vanessa had smiled tightly and said she trusted their current team completely. After that, the tiredness began in earnest. At first, I blamed the weather, then the season, then, inevitably, age. I started falling asleep in the middle of conversations, forgetting appointments, repeating myself. Marcus began looking at me with growing concern. "Mom, maybe you should see someone about your memory," he would say gently. Vanessa would nod beside him, all sympathy. And all the while, Jordan was watching. "I learned to read when no one was looking," he said. "Mama left books and papers everywhere. I practiced at night with a flashlight under the blanket. By the time I was 7, I could read almost anything." He paused, looked down at his mug. I read her notes. Printouts from websites. Things about how old people lose their minds slowly. How doctors don't always check for medicine. When someone dies of natural causes. How it's hard to prove anything if the person already seems confused. My hands clenched around my own mug until my knuckles ached. "She was studying," I said flatly. He nodded. "She highlighted parts. Wrote things in the margins. Dosages. Times. How much was safe for a long time. How much would be too much." I felt cold all over. "And your father? Did he know?" Jordan's face changed. Something raw and wounded flickered across it. "At first, he didn't want to believe it," he said. "I heard them fighting once. Daddy shouted that it was wrong, that you were his mother. Mama said it was only a little help, that you were already forgetting things anyway. She said it would be kinder in the long run, that everyone would be better off if you just slept more. And then didn't wake up." The room spun. I pressed my palm against the table to steady myself. "My own son," I whispered. "He cried after," Jordan said quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. "He said he didn't want to hurt you. But Mama said if he told anyone, they would take me away, put me in a home, said I was too hard to care for, that no one else would want me." I looked at him, small, thin, so serious. "You heard all of that?" "Yes." "And you still protected him?" "I didn't want him to be alone," Jordan said quietly, "even if he was scared of her too." I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were warm, a little sticky from chocolate. "You're braver than anyone I've ever known," I told him. He gave the smallest shrug. "I just didn't want to lose you." We sat in silence for a long time after that. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. "We need a plan, right now, while they're gone." He looked up at me expectantly. "First," I said, "no more of her tea, ever. We throw out every bag she left. Second, we start writing things down. Everything you remember. Dates, what she said, what you saw. Third, we have to be smart. When they come back, you still have to pretend, just like always. No one can know you spoke." "Not yet," he nodded slowly. "But Grandma, what if she notices you're different? You're not sleepy anymore." "Then we make her think I'm worse," I said grimly. "I'll act confused, forgetful, tired, whatever she expects to see. She has to believe her plan is working." Jordan's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't argue. "Fourth," I continued, "we need proof. Real proof. Not just your word, although that will be powerful later. We need papers, tests, something doctors and police can't ignore." I thought of my old friend Dr. Caldwell, my primary care physician for nearly 20 years. She had always listened carefully, never dismissed me as just getting old. "I'm going to see the doctor tomorrow," I told him. "I'll ask for blood tests. Full screening. If those drugs are still in my system, even a trace, it will show." Jordan looked hopeful for the first time. "And when they come back," I went on, "we'll record everything. Every word. I have that little digital recorder I use for book club notes. We'll hide it. If she talks about the tea, about doses, about anything, we'll have it." He nodded again, more firmly this time. "But we have to be careful," I warned. "She's smart. She's planned this for years. If she suspects anything..." "I know how to pretend," he said quietly. "I've had a lot of practice." The rest of that first afternoon passed in a strange, suspended calm. We made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup from a can. Ordinary food, ordinary movements, yet every second felt charged. Jordan spoke freely when we were alone, asking questions, making small observations, laughing once when I accidentally dropped a spoon and swore under my breath. Each time he spoke, it startled me all over again. After lunch, we went upstairs to the guest room, Jordan's room when he stayed over. The dinosaur wallpaper I had chosen when he was 4 still covered the walls. Back then, I had hoped the bright colors might spark something in him. Now those painted creatures felt like silent witnesses. Jordan walked straight to the dresser. "There's something I need to show you," he said. "But we have to be quiet." He moved a stack of folded t-shirts aside. Beneath them, wrapped in an old receiving blanket, was a thick yellow folder. "She hid it here," he whispered. "She thought I couldn't read. Thought I just liked the blanket because it's soft." He handed it to me. I sat on the edge of the bed. He sat beside me. I opened the folder with shaking fingers. The first page was a printout from a medical website. Signs of natural memory decline in the elderly. Paragraphs highlighted in yellow. Gradual short-term memory loss. Increased confusion and disorientation. Changes in sleep patterns. Difficulty with multi-step tasks. Every symptom listed was one I had experienced over the last 2 years. The next page was worse. When elderly parents become a burden. How to make difficult decisions. Handwritten notes in the margin. Vanessa's neat, precise cursive. Private nursing home, 5,000 plumbers month. Guardianship process, timeline, costs, access to accounts. Issues proving incompetence without clear medical decline. My fingers cramped around the paper. The third page was about medications. Drug interactions in the elderly. Risk of overdose. Underlined sections. Combination of strong sedatives, lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and tranquilizers can cause respiratory depression, hypotension, coma, death. Symptoms often attributed to natural age-related decline. In the margins, numbers, dosages, intervals, calculations. The final page was handwritten on lined notebook paper. At the top, progress notes, EV, Eloise Van. Below, a list of dates stretching back 2 years. I read aloud, voice trembling. March 15th, first dose. No immediate reaction. Appears tired. Attributes to age. April 2nd, slight increase. Complains of head fog. No suspicion. June 10th, noticeably more compliant. Argues less. Easier to manage. September 3rd, brief episode of clarity. Asking questions about memory. Reduced dose for 1 week to avoid suspicion. And then more recent, October 1st, financial pressure increasing. Object needs removal before next audit. October 10th, concentrated doses prepared for cruise week. Calculation, sufficient for final outcome in 48 to 72 hours. Final outcome. My hands shook so badly the paper rattled. She wasn't just slowing me down, I whispered. She planned to finish it, this week, while they're on the cruise. Perfect alibi. Jordan's face had gone pale. She said on the phone, he repeated softly. How long can we wait for it to happen naturally? Time to speed it up. I closed the folder. We have this, I said. This is evidence, intent, method, timeline. He nodded, but his eyes were wide. Grandma, what if they come back and I'm still alive? I looked at him, really looked. Then we make sure they never get another chance. That night we sat at the kitchen table with a fresh notebook. I asked questions. He answered, dates, colors of packaging, smells of the powder, exact words he had overheard. His memory was extraordinary. He remembered conversations from 2 years ago, almost word for word. When my hand grew tired from writing, he took the pen and added details himself. Neat, careful handwriting. Around 9 o'clock he yawned. You should sleep, I said gently. He hesitated. Will you be okay alone? I smiled, my first real smile since that morning. I'm not alone anymore, I told him. Neither are you. He climbed the stairs slowly. I followed, tucked him in, kissed his forehead the way I always had. This time he whispered back, Good night, Grandma. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, I answered, throat tight. More than anything. I sat in the living room long after he fell asleep. The house was quiet, only the soft ticking of the grandfather, clock and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I looked at the yellow folder on the coffee table, at the notebook filled with Jordan's careful handwriting, at the small digital voice recorder I had dug out of the junk drawer and tested. I thought about the cruise ship somewhere in the ocean right now, Vanessa laughing at the captain's table, Marcus sipping cocktails, both of them believing that by the time they returned, I would be gone, or at least so far gone that no one would question anything. They had no idea. Not just that I was still alive, but that I had the one thing they never expected, an 8-year-old witness who had been listening all along, and a grandmother who was finally awake. The morning Marcus and Vanessa were due back from the cruise began with a phone call that turned every remaining doubt into cold certainty. It was still early, Jordan hadn't even come downstairs yet, when my phone rang. The clinic's number flashed on the screen. I answered immediately. Eloise, Dr. Caldwell said. Her voice was stripped of its usual warmth. The results are in. We need to speak urgently. Ideally, you should come in today. And I strongly recommend involving the police. My heart thudded once, hard. What did you find? Significant concentrations of multiple substances not prescribed to you. Lorazepam, diphenhydramine, zolpidem, among others. Levels high enough to cause severe cognitive impairment, chronic sedation, respiratory depression. Potentially fatal if continued or increased. She paused, letting the words settle. Eloise, someone has been systematically administering these to you. The pattern is unmistakable. The fact that the levels dropped sharply over the last 4 or 5 days explains why you're suddenly feeling clearer. But before that, the doses were consistent and escalating. I pressed the phone so tightly against my ear it hurt. How long could this have been going on? Judging by buildup and clearance rates, at least 18 months. Possibly closer to 2 years. If whoever was responsible had continued at the cruise week dosage you described, it could have been lethal within days. And it would almost certainly have been ruled natural causes, heart failure, age-related decline, respiratory arrest in sleep. I closed my eyes. Thank you, doctor. Can you prepare the official report? Already done. I'll have it ready when you come in. And Eloise, if you are still in that house, do not stay alone. This is no longer a medical matter. It's criminal. I'm not alone, I said quietly. I have Jordan. A small silence. Be careful, she said. Call me the moment anything changes. I hung up and stood motionless in the kitchen. Everything Jordan had told me, every whispered detail, every overheard phone call, every note in that yellow folder, was now confirmed in black and white medical language. Poisoning, attempted murder. I heard small footsteps on the stairs. Jordan appeared in the doorway, hair messy from sleep, dinosaur t-shirt wrinkled. They found it? He asked immediately. I nodded. Everything you said. The medicines, the doses, all of it. He didn't smile. He just looked at me with those steady dark eyes. Then we have to finish it today, he said. We spent the morning preparing. We hid the voice recorder on the living room, bookshelf tucked between old volumes of poetry, and gardening books angled so the tiny microphone faced the center of the room. I tested it twice. Clear sound, red light blinking steadily when recording. I showed Jordan the signal we would use. When I say, Jordan, could you bring Grandma a glass of water, please? My head is spinning a little. That's your cue. You walk to the shelf, take the recorder out, hold it up. Don't say anything until they ask what it is. He nodded solemnly. I'll do it right. I rehearsed my performance one last time. Hunched shoulders, slow speech, confused pauses, the occasional drift in the middle of a sentence. Jordan watched critically. Less shaking, he advised. When the medicine was strong, you didn't shake much. You just went quiet, like the words were heavy. I adjusted. He was right. He had watched me deteriorate for 2 years. He knew the exact texture of the fog. Around 1:30, we heard the familiar crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. I settled into the armchair, deliberately disheveled, cardigan slipping off one shoulder, hair slightly mussed, expression vague. Jordan arranged himself on the rug with his action figures, head down, silent. The perfect picture of the nonverbal child they expected. The front door opened without knocking. They had keys. Eloise? Vanessa's voice floated in first, bright, concerned, melodic. We're back! How are you two holding up? I let a long beat pass before answering, as though gathering the energy. We're here, I said slowly, letting the words drag. Vanessa appeared in the doorway first, tanned. Glowing, expensive cruise clothes, pristine. Her eyes swept the room in one practiced glance. Me slumped in the chair, Jordan silent on the floor. A flicker of satisfaction crossed her face before she replaced it with theatrical worry. Oh my goodness, Eloise! She hurried over, placed a cool hand on my forehead. You look awful. You really didn't take care of yourself at all this week, did you? Marcus followed behind her. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders stooped. Not the face of a man who had enjoyed a relaxing vacation. Mom, he said quietly, crouching beside the chair. Are you okay? I lifted my head slowly, as though it weighed too much. Tired, I murmured. Forget things. Don't always know what day it is. Vanessa jumped in smoothly. See, she said to Marcus, voice soft but pointed. It's exactly what we talked about. Cognitive decline, age-related. It's progressing faster than we hoped. She turned back to me, all sympathy. You drank the tea, right? The chamomile I left for you? I nodded vaguely. Every day. Morning and night. Like you said. I paused, then added deliberately, it's stronger this time, but you know best. Her eyes sharpened just for a second, then softened again. Did you finish all the bags? She asked casually. I gave a small, helpless shrug. I tried not to forget. She relaxed visibly. Marcus rubbed his face. Maybe we should take you to Dr. Caldwell, he said. Get her to check you properly. Vanessa's hand twitched on my arm. We already spoke to Caldwell before we left, remember? She said quickly. She agreed it's consistent with age-related dementia. A general practitioner won't add much now. We need a specialist. I let my head tip back against the chair. If you think... What's best? I whispered. Vanessa smiled, small, victorious. That's right. Family takes care of family. You don't want to be a burden to Marcus and me? Or to Jordan, do you? I echoed the words back, faint and broken. Don't want to be a burden. She nodded, pleased. Exactly. So we've been thinking, maybe a nice private facility, professional caregivers, or guardianship, so we can handle your affairs properly. You'd be safe, cared for. I let silence stretch. Then softly, thank you, Vanessa, for everything, especially the tea. She froze, just a fraction too long. Of course, she recovered, smiling. I only want what's best for you. I looked toward Jordan. Jordan, I said weakly, could you bring Grandma a glass of water, please? My head is spinning a little. He rose immediately. Vanessa frowned slightly. Kitchen's the other way, sweetheart. He ignored her. He walked straight to the bookshelf, reached between the books, pulled out the small black recorder, and turned to face them. The room went dead silent. Marcus blinked. Jordan, what's that? Jordan held it up calmly. This is a voice recorder, he said in that clear, perfect child's voice. I've been recording for Grandma. Everything Mama said about the medicine in the tea. Vanessa's face drained of color. Marcus stared at his son as though seeing him for the first time. Vanessa recovered first, voice high and sharp. That's ridiculous. He can't speak. You know the diagnosis. Severe developmental disorder. I can speak, Jordan interrupted quietly. Always could. You told me if I ever talked in front of people again, you'd send me to a hospital where they give shots that make you sleep forever, where no one would come for me. Marcus exhaled like he'd been punched. Jordan, Vanessa rounded on me. You put him up to this. You're delusional. Another episode. I rose from the chair, slowly, steadily. No trace of the frail old woman she expected. The episode is over, Vanessa, I said calmly. I haven't touched your tea in 5 days. My head is clear. My memory is sharp. And I have proof. I pulled the yellow folder from beside the cushion and opened it. October 10th, I read aloud. Concentrated doses prepared for cruise week. Calculation. Sufficient for final outcome in 48 to 72 hours. Vanessa's lips parted, but no sound came. Your handwriting, Jordan said quietly. I watched you write it. I continued. October 1st, financial pressure increasing. Object needs removal before next financial audit. I looked straight at her. Object, that's me. Marcus sank onto the couch, hands over his face. Vanessa, what the hell is this? Nothing, she snapped. Notes, research, I was reading articles. And the blood tests, I continued. Dr. Caldwell has the full toxicology report. Dangerous levels of sedatives and hypnotics. None prescribed to me. Vanessa's eyes darted toward the door. You went to Caldwell? Yes, and I called the police before you walked in. I lifted my phone. They're on their way. She laughed, short, brittle. No one will believe you. An elderly woman with dementia and a special needs child? It's your word against mine. Jordan stepped closer to me. Not just our word, he said. The recorder. Your voice. Talking about doses. Talking about speeding it up. Sirens sounded in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. Vanessa lunged, not at me but at Jordan, hand outstretched toward the recorder. I moved faster than I thought possible at 66. I stepped between them. Don't you dare touch him, I said, low and deadly. You've broken him enough. She stopped cold. Marcus finally stood. Enough, he shouted. Both of you, stop! He looked from me to Vanessa to Jordan. Mom, is this true? I met his eyes. I have proof, tests, notes, recordings, Jordan's testimony. And soon, the police will have it all. The sirens were close now, red and blue lights flashing through the windows. Vanessa's face twisted. Anger, fear, calculation. You'll never make it stick, she hissed. I smiled thinly. We'll see. The police arrived moments later. They listened. They took statements. They took the folder, the recorder, Jordan's notebook. They took Vanessa away in handcuffs. Marcus stayed behind, broken, weeping quietly on the couch while officers spoke to me and to Jordan. When the house finally emptied, Jordan climbed into the armchair beside me. I wrapped my arm around him. We did it, he whispered. Yes, I said, kissing the top of his head. We did. 9 months later, the trial ended. Vanessa received 15 years, attempted murder, elder abuse, child endangerment, psychological abuse of a minor. The judge's voice had shaken with quiet fury when she spoke of a mother who forced her own child to live in silence for fear of his life. Marcus avoided prison, cooperated fully, testified against her, entered mandatory therapy. He relinquished custody of Jordan to me voluntarily. I can't undo what I didn't stop, he told me outside the courtroom, eyes red. but I can make sure he's safe. And that's with you. Jordan and I live quietly now. We bake cookies on weekends, flour everywhere, vanilla in the air. He goes to school, real school, where teachers are astonished at how quickly he catches up. He sees Dr. Martinez weekly. So do I. He told me once he wants to be a doctor, not the kind who gives shots to make people sleep, but the kind who helps silent children find their voices again. Some nights he still wakes up, checks the locks, listens to the house breathe. But the nightmares come less often, and every time they do, I'm there. One evening on the porch, he asked, "Are we safe now, Grandma?" I thought carefully. "Not perfectly," I said. "No one is. But we're safer than we've ever been. Because now we know what danger looks like. We have proof. We have each other. And we both have voices." He leaned against me. "I love you," he said. "I love you more," I answered. And in the quiet that followed, with the sky turning soft purple above us, I knew the truest victory wasn't the jail sentence or the house I kept or the money Vanessa never touched. It was the small boy beside me, once forced into silence, who now spoke freely, laughed freely, dreamed freely. We are scarred. We are cautious, but we are no longer silent. And no one will ever force us to be again.